Okay, we are live. We've got my old friend Dust, and we're going to have a good chat about some very important issues all over the news for good reason as a Palestine issue. But generally speaking, let's reverse. You know what? Let me just get my light on. 1 second. Does that make it better? Not much better. It's too much
It's because you've got a
brightness.
big light behind you.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me try. It doesn't feel like a big light behind me. It's just anyway, but it just shows up as white here. But anyway, um, yeah, the Palestine issue. Now, I'm not just talking about it just to add more noise to the situation. I'm going to say something that yeah, actually, most things I say are probably really different to what most people say. That's one thing. So that's the first thing. So what I'm going to offer as a solution, a very quick solution that's actually working at the moment, but most of the Western media don't. Well, most of the Westerners don't know, and a lot of Palestinians want to ignore because it feels uncomfortable. Solutions that are saving lives. So that's what's going to come up. But generally speaking, when I talk with Dust and his friends and all our friends, maybe somebody else will be joining soon as well. I always try to talk about practical solutions to world problems. I do it from the perspective of as a Muslim through tried and tested Islamic teachings, and that's my intro. Dust, do you want to say where you come from when you offer
Well,
your advice?
I come from the point of view of using reason and history rather than just current history, which is very seductive and easy to use. It means you don't have to understand anything in particular apart from the main type of noise which is being presented by your religious leaders or the media, which is the same thing, of course. And so I come from a human point of view and with the idea that human rights, no matter what you call yourself, or label yourself, human rights take precedent. My name is Dust, and I come with a 2 year
Cool.
guarantee, not Dust.
Oh, rhyming as well. Okay, so let's just get on with it. Don't like to waste time. So let's quickly share this screen as I usually do. And I'm going to get right to my main point that a lot of people probably won't like. Let's see what happens. So, obviously, I always try to write down what's this got to do with happiness. When I say happiness, thank you very much for the timer. I'm talking about very much the general sense. How does this literally in this case? How do we get peace and save lives? And this is what it's going to do. And okay, here we go. The Quran prophesied that the Jews returning. Okay, ah, if I put in the right order. Okay, yeah, I'll say this. You know what? I'm going to start with this. I felt that would be more relevant first, but let's start with this. Very simple. The Quran says you've gone sideways somehow. Did I do that or you do that? Did you change it or something? I don't know. Did you twist it?
No.
What?
Anyway, let's focus and we'll deal with that in a
Okay,
second.
fine. Yeah, we will look at you sideways for a bit. Um, yeah, so the Quran says that, and interestingly, it references the Bible. It says like we've given this prophecy before, and that is um, the righteous will inherit the earth. You would have heard of that famous phrase probably if you heard something from the Bible. Um, and that's from Psalms. I forgot to get the exact reference from where in Psalms, but it's very well known. Okay, how is that a solution? Let's put it in a couple of ways. First of all, nobody's life is worth their property. Like, even if I don't like my neighborhood, I would leave. If there's something small about my neighborhood, like if they're racist people or something, I'll be like, okay, let's move to another place where my family are not going to be in big trouble and stuff like that. But over in this case, in Palestine, your life is, you know, at threat all the time. There are millions of problems, and your education, absolutely everything. is terrible. So why stick to your property? Now you might say, you know what, it's not so easily done, right? And so and let me explain the other side of the prophecy. So why did I mention um the righteous will inherit the earth? The point is, you leave your property, let the Israelis self-destruct. Now you might say, how is that going to happen? They've already got plenty of problems amongst themselves. They've got the Orthodox Jews who maintain the population. Okay, they're the only ones who are having a lot of children. And then the liberal Jews who are quickly not having any children. That's another big problem. And there's a big clash between them. And then you've got the settlers who are relying on freebies. Uh, and I've written they've got, I can't remember, I have to get the reference to it, but it wouldn't be surprising at all if you got criminal element, that people who are happy to take other people's land, they're not going to have the best background. So these are all unhealthy elements to make a society very unstable society, I would say. So it all fall apart. And not only that, you've got the example of England and many Western countries where, despite not wanting immigrants, they have to depend on immigrants because the indigenous population is too depressed and dysfunctional to maintain society. So all the immigrants are basically making society work. And who are the immigrants? They're Muslim people largely. So I'm saying this is not just me depending on the faith. There's a logical reality to this. So where should the Palestinians go? I just uploaded a video this morning from uh, uh, let's say a dinner that I went to a Palestinian's house, and he was living in a mansion. Loads of people living in mansions here because life is relatively cheap here. And so my point is that life. Oh, and that's part of. I'm kind of jumping around. You can read this. Whoso immigrates from his country for the cause of Allah, the earth is abundant place. So if you believe in God, you will know that God will protect you and serve you if you do things for God. But also, it's a practical reality that have I run out of time? It's a practical reality that immigrants do really well abroad because the indigenous population become a bit soft, and the immigrants are, ready to go and work hard, and then they do well. It's a good reset as well. And there are many Palestinians who've done extremely well. Just like for the queen to be of Jordan is a Palestinian, for example, come back from Kuwait or something where they left from Palestinian too. Anyway, so there's also very practical reasons why this plan will work, and it's an immediate solution to save lives. Lots of people are already doing it, and it's working out really well for them. That's all I say. Have I done well over my 5 minutes?
5 minutes 51 seconds. It's not bad.
Oh man. Okay, yeah. How are we going to get you vertical again? Are you sure you didn't touch anything?
It's when you started trying to put your screen
Okay. Okay, let's done. Okay, I removed it. I might have pressed something, isn't it?
I'll just refresh.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what we've got here. I need to talk to you about regarding for not allowing. Cool. So somebody wants to have a chat about a different topic, which is
right.
But
yeah.
We'll
talk about that.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll go. We're sticking to the topic logic, voila. But contact me or something. Put your email in the comments or something like that, and then I'll whatever. We'll get in contact. Yeah, I'll put my email while Dust is talking. Go for it. Go for it, Dust.
So what's happening right now is
so it's your turn.
Can you not hear me?
I can hear you. You can't hear me?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, cool.
So, right, what's happening now in that part of the world is an absolute horror show for both sides of people. There's nobody winning from this. It is just bloodshed on top of more bloodshed. But I mean, there is a winner in all this already, and that's the weapon companies who profit from the murder of Jewish children being killed, murdered, and Palestinian children being murdered. The weapon companies, their share prices are now going through the roof. They're having the best of times right now. They're drinking champagne at their rise and profits that have been made, and they're only going to get richer. So if you want to look at who's celebrating right now, who's having parties, who's going to buy themselves another Lamborghini, just look at the weapon companies. They are singularly the kings of your murder, your family's murder, your community's murder. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish, doesn't matter if you're Palestine, doesn't matter if you're Ukraine, Russian, doesn't matter if you're from a war-torn country in Africa. Guess what? There is someone drinking champagne, taking cocaine in a fancy little restaurant right now because they're all getting richer. That's the absolute winner here. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. The weapon companies are not a recent discovery. They're a constant and permanent stain on our communities, and making profit out of a Jewish child being murdered, a Palestinian child being murdered, should be seen as a war crime. And because if it isn't, guess what? These weapon companies are incentivized to make sure that you and you and you and you and you hate each other and wage war against each other, because that means they can afford that next bottle of champagne, that new party, that new prostitute, that new house, that new private school for their children, and that new owning of that university. So that's the winner, and that's always been the winner. And this is, again, not a recent phenomenon. This is going back hundreds, thousands of years, that a little group of people get away. And if you've got shares in weapon companies, that means you are personally responsible for the death of those Jewish children and Palestinian children. You are the reason why they are dead. Nothing to do with Palestine, nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with any of these things that get thrown around in our media all the time and you're told by your religious leaders. This is all just noise and nonsense. Your land is owned by God. It's complete nonsense. The real truth is making permanent war between brothers and sisters. Because guess what? Do you know what a Semite is? Do you know what a Semite is? Do you know what a
Yeah.
Semite is? No, it's not a
Anybody?
question. It's
Oh,
not a question
sorry.
for you.
Okay, go on, go on.
I was just being,
Yes.
I was
Talking
labouring a
to the
point.
audience. Yeah.
Do you
Go
know
on.
what a Semite is? It is someone from the Palestinian Israel area that's been there for thousands of years. So all it is, so if you're killing or promoting killing of Palestinian people or Jewish people, that makes you an anti-Semite on both sides. You're an anti-Semite if you're telling Jewish Palestinian people that they should be all bombed to hell, which is exactly what is going on. And you're an anti-Semite if you're telling Jewish people that they deserve to be bombed. I mean, Khaled's solution is the typical solution of the religious people, which is just let people just murder each other and wipe each other out and sit back and watch it all happen. Will profit from it. I mean, he's been saying that about Europe. He's been saying it about, now he's saying it about Israel, of course. And that's just the most childish thing that you could ever possibly can imagine. I got 30 more seconds. and we got a new speaker as well. So yeah, this is just the same old war going on, and it's the war where only one group of people walk away the winners, and while everyone else gets slaughtered for their profit. You're being used. Your child's death is being used to propagate and prop up a share price, and to make sure that one little group of people get richer as always, which is your Abrahamic leaders. Right, I think we've got a new
Cool,
new
Claire.
speaker.
Thank you for joining. I realized it was my fault. I forgot to send her the link. I thought I did send the link, so that's why she didn't join earlier on. Okay, yeah, cool. Anyway, so Claire,
Hello.
do you want to introduce yourself? Maybe say something about what you know about the situation or the theology. Actually, Jürgen, you say whatever you need to say, isn't it? And then, yes, introduce yourself first, and then we'll give you your 5 minutes.
Right.
Can you put the question back up as well, please?
Oh, the last one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me, Khalid. Hello, Dust. I have written a book called Secular Quranism, which is basically Sharia for non-Muslims in the West to solve their political and social problems. And I think it will solve many of their foreign policy problems, because anti-Semitism, in my view, is really generated by anti-Americanism, because a lot of non-Western countries have a problem with Western imperialism led by America. And unfortunately for European nations are US vassal states who do whatever America orders them to do unquestioningly, and this applies to all NATO countries as well as Australia, New Zealand and Canada. So they are all pro-Israel, and they say Israel is good because it's the only liberal democracy in the Middle East. But if you were to ask Americans how they would feel if Canada became communist and Mexico became Muslim, you know that they wouldn't be able to sleep a wink at night. So this is presumably what Muslims in the Middle East feel about America being on their doorstep, and that is why Iran calls Israel Little Satan, meaning that America is Great Satan. As far as peace in Israel or Palestine, if you prefer, is whether it's possible, I think it can be solved with regard if you use theology. So if it can be argued that Allah is Zionist, possibly the Jews might win. And if the Muslims can prove he isn't, then they would have to concede that Jews have the right to live there. But it would appear that neither side really believes in God and won't debate theology in a serious way. But there is a verse, chapter 17, verse 104, that has God telling Moses that Israelites are to go and dwell in the land. God didn't specify which land, but presumably, if he's calling Moses and his people the children of Israel, he must mean Israel. But even this is contentious to Muslims who say.
And this is a quote from the Quran, you by the way, not from the Bible, isn't it? Is that right, Claire?
Yes, did I say?
Yeah.
But
Oh no, you didn't. No,
the
you didn't
Quran.
say the Bible. You just said chapter, whatever. But yeah, but from the Quran is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Yes, and that I think is a crucial verse. I think in some way, having looked at the Hamas charter, they seem to understand it, because the whole idea is that if God says. If God were a Zionist, he would be saying, yes, you can live in Israel provided you obey my laws. He didn't say.
What do you mean by a Zionist? I'm a bit confused in a sense, but why would God be a Zionist from a Muslim point of view? That's what I'm confused about. I think I read something you sent me, but I'm a bit confused about that.
Yes, I mean, it is confusing, but I would say, and I think everybody would agree, that Zionism is the idea that Jews deserve a homeland. And there
Sure.
was a time when it wasn't Israel, they were considering all kinds of countries like Uganda, but in the end it was Israel. And now they're in occupation. I guess, it can't be anywhere else because they're already there. So, and Hamas has sort of basically said, if I read it correctly, that Jews can live in Israel, but they have to live under Sharia. And this was something I only discovered in the last week, that is the 1988 Hamas Charter. So they're not saying we're going to kill all Jews. They're saying you can live here, but you have to live under Sharia. And we also know that Orthodox Jews, such
And would you
called
say that's a really bad thing for them to live under Sharia? Would that be really different to their own Sharia? Sharia just means religious law, isn't it?
Yeah, because I mean, it's been said that Islam is Judaism light. So so we also know that what is halal is not kosher, but what is kosher is halal, meaning that Jews observe a higher standard of restriction, and Muslims a lower one. And this means, if you were practicing Judaism properly, you would have to agree that living under Sharia would be a walk in the park because, Muslims would be doing a little bit of, or some of what Judaism requires, but not to the same extent, not with so many rules. And we already know that the Torah has 36 capital offences, and the Quran doesn't. So Neturei Karta, who are the sect of Orthodox Jews, are basically saying we're anti-Zionist because we don't think that Jews have the right to go to Israel and change everything there, and we should just go and live there and live according to what we find. And it was previously Muslim under the Ottoman Empire. But after the founding of the secular state of Israel in 1948, it's basically been a liberal democracy, and I think
You have
that is
30
basically the
seconds.
problem. And so, if the matter is to be resolved, I mean, somebody has to agree to live differently. But I think with the problem with the Jews is that they don't even agree with each other, and secular Jews and religious Jews would themselves have to live under a two-state solution, even without the Arabs being there.
Okay,
Yeah.
And, and,
thank
and,
you.
and basically the problem is that the secular Jews refuse to live under Sharia, refuse to contemplate it. Their media don't even discuss it because it wasn't something I was even aware of until I read the Hamas Charter on Wikipedia. And so they're not even contemplating it. They're not, it's not up for negotiation. And so it seems that secular
Okay,
Jews.
you've had time
Well, why can't I just complete my point?
because you
Because
had time 1 minute 30 seconds ago, and I did put on the screen that your time was
We'll
coming.
go round again. What do you think, Claire? Just get another 30 seconds. Is that all right,
Well, I'm
Dust? What
just
do you
saying,
think?
God is,
Yeah.
is maybe arguably a Zionist, but he's certainly not a liberal Democrat, and that is really my final point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. All right. Very interesting. Okay, so should we all have a go? Okay, so yeah, it's 5 minutes on again. Okay, cool. So I'll start with this comment on the bottom. Jews and Muslims are there. What do we do about it? We're not going to change it. Actually, Jews, Muslims, Christians have been there for a long time, and they were living peacefully before Zionism turned up. So it shouldn't actually be a problem. It's more a case of the Zionist problem. And so the solution I gave very quickly in the beginning was an immediate solution, because if it was my family there, I don't want a single person dying. But there are definitely longer term solutions. And some of the things I felt like it was worth pointing out, I'm not going to share the screen all the time, but there's the Quran, one of the reasons why we should listen to the Quran is the Quran has prophesied this situation exactly already. And it says, and after him, we said to the children of Israel, dwell ye in the land, and when the time of the promise of the latter days comes, we shall bring you together out of various peoples. That's chapter 17, verse 105, or some people might call it 104. The point is that the Quran prophesied the Jews coming from all nations back to Israel. And so it's also talking about a follow-up prophecy that the righteous will inherit the earth. So meaning that when you inherit something, it comes to you automatically rather than forcibly taking it, which is what the Zionists have done at the moment. And so what I'm saying is, it's not going to, I don't think that if you leave the Jews to themselves, like Claire was saying, because anybody who's following what's happening in Israel is already falling apart. You've got completely opposite people in society, and they're both yeah. So you got the Orthodox Jews and the liberals, and they're already fighting, and they want completely different governments. And then you've got this third party of the settlers, who anybody who relies on freebies. I don't know. Do you know, Claire? You might be able to help me because I've read this somewhere. But is there a criminal, like I don't know how to describe it, but a large percentage of criminals amongst settlers? Have you ever heard that one?
I
No,
don't know.
no.
This is new to me, but I suppose they have to be a bit tough to live there.
They've got to be, but also you've got to be like you're happily living on somebody else's land, and willing to even shoot other people who used to own that land and burn their olive groves and stuff like that. So definitely a criminal element if they weren't criminals already. So you've got these three unhealthy elements in some ways. When I say, sorry, I should explain, this is something else I didn't say. The Orthodox Jews largely don't work. Their job, okay, is to simply study the Torah. That's their job. And so they don't go to work. So you've got these really unstable elements. We leave them to it, they will start destroying their own country. And by the way, Muslims also already have a very positive role. They're judges and different. I've got. I know I've got friends in Israel who have businesses and things like that. So why not live amongst them? Go to Israel or go to Jordan. I put up a video, like I said a minute ago, of Palestinians got a mansion, right? And loads of people got mansions here. I'm living in a mansion here, right? And you don't have to be particularly rich. Things are relatively cheap. So but okay, let me give you the longer term solutions. First of all, unity. The Muslims should be united. They could be incredibly powerful. I've heard something, and I have to check this, but I think the Muslims are actually putting their oil power into use and telling the Israelis, you better stop your genocide right now, otherwise we're going to cut the oil off. I have to double check on that, but it's so easy for Muslims to control this situation if they wanted to, with all their combined oil power. And anything else? Yeah, this is going to be really uncomfortable, but Palestinians are not that morally good. This is well known amongst the Arabs, even the Palestinians who live here that I know. They say exactly that. Like, for example, I've got a link to a YouTube video where they're very comfortable with the idea that 11% of them are involved in adultery and they're not too bothered about it. So there is an issue, and that ties back to the prophecy that the righteous will inherit the land, and the land in this case is specifically Palestine in this verse of the Quran and the Bible that it refers to. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is it's unbelievable. Oh, let me start the stopwatch. It's just so sad what I've been hearing so far from the two contributors from the Abrahamic religion, which is being seeing things as pathetic as people having adulteries leads into this. And you just cannot believe this sort of low-level intellectual interaction is actually transpiring amongst people, that it's down to this level. And actually real bigger pictures, they're just being ignored. Like, as we're talking about weapon companies, and how this has been going for thousands of years, this turtle war. And it's so sad that this is just a story. It's been going all the time. Keep blaming people for not being the perfect human beings, and that means we can just keep justifying killing them and justify turning a blind eye to their horror and misery, because they're not perfect human beings, and they're not doing what we deem as being the perfect God-ridden scenario, which is all, as I've said before on Call's channel. I mean, Abrahamic religions are just designed to belittle and abuse people for being human, and from that situation they create, that which is being human is a horrific thing to be, they come in and exploit that. And of course, being human is what we're evolutionarily born to be, and it's just so sad and trivial hearing this being brought up in such a discussion of such great importance. Let's get back on a proper subject. Let's talk about Israel. What was that was sold to the Jewish people as a home? This is what's being told to the Jewish community. This is what's being told to the international community. And this is clearly an absolute lie done by the Zionists, who have no interest in building a home for the Jewish people or the community. What they have interest in is building religious fanatics, more religious fanatics on either side, Muslim religious fanatics, Israel Jewish religious fanatics, and Christian religious fanatics. That's all this is all about when it comes to Israel, is building more hatred. But the hatred is built and justified in the name of God, and the murder and the land, just like Hitler did when he was trying to bring about the Christian Empire, the Third Reich, which he was successful in, of course, for a brief period. He was doing it all in the name of God, and that we should, the Abrahamic children should inherit the earth. They should inherit the wealth, and inherit being the ultimate consumers in your society, which is exactly what Abrahamic religions have always done. So this idea that Hitler was going to bring about the chosen land for the chosen people, it's just absolute bullshit. Sorry to be so sweary wary, but it's continuous rhetoric of diarrhea. And the religious people have just bought into this. Oh, we're going to family values. We get to abuse people we don't like, and now we can abuse people in the name of God, rather than just admitting to ourselves that the Jewish people, the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim people were just educated to hate people that are human, and be very drawn to this idea of what is no more than this Superman sort of existence. Oh, I'm this super identity, perfect in all forms of creation, which is absolute nonsense. Can someone kill the phone, please? Not literally, though. So, yeah, Israel was just like the Third Reich, was never built for the home for your religious communities. It was built to create more murder, which results in more terrorists, which results in more war. But fundamentally, it creates more religious fanatics, because in times of horror and desperation, the only sane and logical thing to do is become a religious fanatic. So not only do weapon companies profit, but your religious leaders profit. They get to create this perfect human being in their mind, of course, which I completely disagree with, which is a religious fanatic who will happily commit any horrendous crime, as long as you stick the badge of your Abrahamic religion on God on top of it. Therefore, every horrific murder, slaughter, baby killing is now justified. I've had 1 minute 50 seconds. Over to our next new speaker, please. Not new speaker, but our new contributor.
Yes, I'd like to address your point about it being the fault of the Abrahamic God and the Abrahamic religions. I am saying that the Abrahamic narrative actually provides a solution to the problem if you go by the if you accept the narrative that all the Abrahamic religions have been cursed by God, Jews, Christians, and Muslims.
Not cursed, being created by men, of course. These religions are created by men to justify and stay in their own
I don't
position.
accept. I know you are atheist and you
Agnostic.
utter contempt for the Abrahamic faiths, but I'm saying there is
Just-
a system which I want to explain in the 5 minutes allocated to me how it works. So if these people, these Jews, these Christians, these Muslims believe in God, then they would have to accept the possibility that they have been cursed because they have been disobedient and not following his laws, and this includes all of them, and their suffering is the consequence of their disobedience, and to correct themselves they have to obey. And which laws are they to obey? I'm saying there are two versions, there are two divine revelations. There is the Torah for Jews and the Quran for all of humanity. And if the Torah has 36 capital offences and most people aren't Jews, why don't they adopt the Judaism light version of the Quran? And if that is what Hamas says is acceptable to them, then why won't Jews just opt for the Judaism light? Because basically the narrative is that the secular state of Israel is not legitimate according to Jewish law, and that is why Orthodox Jews such as Neturei Karta say they're not the anti-Zionists, and they don't think that the secular state of Israel is legitimate. And for that reason, they're prepared to live as Orthodox Jews under Sharia. Obviously, other Jews don't agree with them, and most Jews prefer to live in Israel as liberal Democrats, and that is not acceptable to their Muslim neighbours, and that is fundamentally the problem. And of course, America and Europe, even though they pretend to be Christian, they are not in fact Christian, and if they were Christian, they would be guilty of the crimes or sins of idolatry and blasphemy, because Christians worship, Christians, I would say, are anti-Semites who worship a Jew. So it's all very absurd, very twisted. They can't explain it to themselves. They don't want to talk in theological terms, and Jews and Muslims don't want to point out the idolatry and blasphemy of Christians. And they have very odd beliefs that they cannot really explain to themselves or others. And that is fundamentally the problem, and the Jews and Muslims are not prepared to point it out to them, because I guess, Jews don't want to upset their Christian overlords, because they know that ultimately it's Christian Zionists that protect Israel or approve of the funding required in America to support the state of Israel. And Muslims, I don't know, Hamas is not quite getting their message through that they want Israelis to live under Sharia. I wasn't aware of it until past week.
I'm just wondering, is it mainly Christian Zionists who provide the money, or is it Jewish Zionists as well?
Well, according to AIPAC, they say that there are not that many Jews in AIPAC. Most of them seem to be Christian Zionists. But Christian Zionists want to protect Israel because they're saying when the Jews go and live in Israel, the Messiah will come, and they actually fund a lot of Jews to go to Israel, and then they convert Jews in Israel to Christianity. And this is what some Jews have been complaining about.
Interesting.
Thank you, Dustin. I have finished. I have finished before
Great,
time.
fantastic. Brilliant. Okay. Okay, so my time, ready, steady, go. Okay, so Duster's made a good point. I think because I've avoided what I thought was the obvious reality to most people, except for a few members of the mainstream media, that it is the Zionists. I don't even like to call them Jews, because I see Zionism as an atheist movement, a land grab movement. That are the persecutors here, right? So I think that's so obvious, and there isn't really much of a debate there amongst the general populace. So that's why I didn't really kind of talk about that. I didn't even talk about the military industrial complex. Yes, that is clearly behind it, but what is behind that? What is getting people to waste their money? Of course, it's going to make the people who sell the arms lots of money, but why are the Zionists doing this in the first place? You know, we've got to get at the root of this. How do we solve? And not even that. How do we solve the problem if this problem is going to linger around for a long time? Is it worth us debating this while even more Palestinians die? So that's why my immediate thing out of sympathy was to say, listen, Palestinians, leave. Israel would want you back anyway, right? It's already demonstrated in Europe, where you've got godless societies. They collapse on themselves very quickly. And they will be asking for Muslims, Palestinians to immigrate back, hardworking Palestinians to come back. They've been running the farms for millennia. They know what they're doing in terms of running Israel anyway. So that's why I didn't really address that too much. I'm looking for immediate solutions. So I've talked about unity as a way of solving problems, and I'm going to look back. I've been hearing some news about Muslims having some level of unity, including Saudi and the Emirates, stopping their oil supply to Israel. I have to double check that. So what else was I going to say? Yeah, I do agree with Dust that Zionists don't care about Jews, and this is being I think this is pretty obvious in some ways. The Zionists are using settlers as pawns to get more land, and that's demonstrated in the recent attacks. Because what happened to the Iron Dome for a couple of hours that Palestinians were able to walk through it? Like, the Iron Dome can shoot down fast-moving rockets, but it couldn't shoot down a paraglider, right? Incredibly slow. It sounds like, I don't think this is much of a conspiracy theory. It sounds like 9/11 number two. Just like, how did slow moving airplanes crash into buildings, and therefore the US could start their cycle of oil wars? This is unfortunately the Zionists sacrificing their own people. It's pretty obvious that they were sacrificed so that the Zionists could go in and wipe out loads of Palestinians even faster. So I think that's not even much of a conspiracy theory. So that agreement there, and then finally the Palestinians are saying we should be doing jihad, in the sense of having a just war, a self-defense war. And there's two reasons why it's not a jihad, because it's not actually just a religious war, because it's not just Muslims there. The Christians are also being persecuted. It's very much a land grab. And even from the Palestinian side, they could pray, but they are willing to sacrifice their lives for land. And that's not right either. And also, this is an obvious thing I should point out. Is it an obvious thing? Part of jihad is you're not allowed to kill anybody who's not involved in the war. You're not allowed to kill women, children, not even allowed to harm trees. So these are well-known Islamic rules, and that's not being followed, right? Thank you very much for that. All the fighting so far has been indiscriminate. Let's say you throw a rocket into the Jewish side, let's say say you, the Hamas or whoever it is, and they don't know who's going to hit, and they just think everybody's collateral damage. So they're wrong in that sense as well. Yes, they have the right to fight, but they've got to do it properly. And according to the Quran, if it was a proper jihad, they would have won because God would have helped them, and that's been demonstrated in the past from time of Prophet Muhammad when he was very weak, and they beat the Romans, beat the Persians. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's, Khalid, the representative of the Abrahamic religion, has constantly said, if we only had more God, all the problems would be solved. And yet the Israel, Palestine, Muslim, Middle East, Africa, the West, they are run by the Abrahamic religions. And their dream and reality, their dream of everyday reality for Muslim people, because there's a difference between the Abrahamic religion, Abrahamic leaders and the people. The people and your leaders are two totally different things. And I'm talking purely about the leadership, by the way. I keep forgetting to say that. But it's purely the leadership I'm referring to. The people, as your Abrahamic religion leaders constantly remind you, you don't matter. You're the sheep. You're to be herded. You're to be the ones controlled. Typical Christian rhetoric. Absolutely disgraceful, despicable horror, which is what rich kids of the Christians have always done to the what they call the sheep, which is just cull them at will and whim. So what we're seeing now is just the dreams today in the world is just the dreams of the Abrahamic religion, which is the leadership, that is, of course, which is this total hell on earth. Because let's not forget, as I said before, it's very hard to create religious fundamentalists if you don't have hell on earth. If you have peace on earth, then you just have religious people. I mean, when Khalid says it, derogatory, calls people atheists, Zionist atheists, and all that, derogatory from Khalid, because he just means they don't believe religious enough like Khalid. That's what Khalid means. They don't think like the way I think. Therefore, even though they're going praying every day, going to your religious centers every day, etc., because they're not doing it even more than Khalid is doing, which is his love for suffering, then he just dismisses them as not proper Muslims, not proper religious people. And it's the typical rhetoric from people like Bob the Destroyer, Khalid, Hitler, who else? Ben Shapiro, an American podcaster. I mean, all these people say exactly the same things. If you don't think what I think about religion, therefore I'm dismissing you out of the religious community, even though these people do identify as being Muslim, Jewish, or Christian. And it's that dismissing that leads to this total mass war and horror, which has happened. I mean, again, yes, Israel and Palestine is happening right now, but it's the same story that's always happened through history. Yes, we need to deal with it and find a solution. Clearly, your religious leaders have no interest in other than creating hell on earth. Because if you don't create hell on earth for everyone, it's very hard to sell heaven. That's a very basic fact. I mean, Khalid's always trying to sell heaven. Religious fundamentalists are always trying to sell the idea of heaven, always trying to sell this idea of his particular flavor of religion, the idea that, but it's very hard to sell when people are happy. That's why Khalid hates happy people and always has hated happy communities and always has been derogatory to people who are not like him, the gay community, women, etc., etc., people that identify with being human rights laws, people that protest because they want a happy world. In a happy world, it's very hard to sell what you're trying to sell. And that's the absolute basic fact of reality. It's very hard to sell heaven if you don't make hell on earth. And this has been known since the beginning of the Abrahamic religions, which is why this war has been perpetuated permanently, because in war, as I said before, desperation breeds desperate thoughts and actions. and that's a constant. So, what is a way forward for these communities? Does it mean having to hate your religious leaders? Maybe it needs for your religious leaders to be looked at more critical. Maybe it needs to be you as your representative. If you're Muslim, Jewish, or Christian, you need to start looking at your religious leaders and asking, putting a set of laws down, which stops them from permanently profiting from war and permanently profiting from the horrors which they commit constantly. Because these different religious leaders from your different religious Abrahamic people, really different Abrahamic religions, they all talk to each other and they all love each other, and they all then get their communities to hate and try and murder each other. So it's an absolute horror show of hypocrisy. But they
I
walk
just want to
away.
clarify: is there a secret meeting you're saying, and then they plan to get their followers to fight each other? Is that what you're saying?
They're not even that secret about it. They, I mean, Israel, the leaders of the Israel are happy to work and fund Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is happy to work with and fund and reward Israel. So the Muslims and the Muslim leadership and the Israeli leadership, Jewish leadership, are happy to work with people that then on the next day they're bombing Muslim people in the Gaza Strip, which they can't escape. Of course, they're in a near permanent prison there, which you shouldn't forget. I'll just finish my last sentence. So, there's religious leaders have no interest in stopping war and creating peace. There's no profit to be made out of that for their profits. Your profits. Right, finished.
Is it my turn?
Yes, your
Yep.
turn. Go, go, go.
I'd like to make the point that Dust is saying that we don't follow his religion and we're awful people for not following his religion. So this is actually an ideological war, with Dust saying that his beliefs are better than everyone else's, and he's
I haven't given
complaining.
any beliefs over yet.
Well, you're saying that Abrahamic religions are rubbish and your
No, I
beliefs are
didn't.
supreme. I mean,
No, I
what
didn't.
else are you saying?
I said that the Abrahamic people should question their leadership and put in rules stopping them from committing murder and profiting from murder of their own communities. That's
So
very
you,
different
so
to what
you agree, so you don't think Abrahamic religions are rubbish? It's just the leaders. So the religions could be good. Is that what you're saying, Dust?
Absolutely.
Oh,
But the communities need to stand up against their leaders because they have no interest in not promoting war and genocide, and they work together to kill their own communities for the name of profit.
They probably think of it as a necessary sacrifice, as people think that in any war there will be casualties and that the ends justify the means. But what we're saying is that the rules, we need to know what the rules are before we know if our leaders are breaking those rules, right?
Yes.
And there are no rules for liberals. There's no official handbook. It's only the Torah and the Quran that has the laws of God. I mean, liberalism is a creation of the European man, and he didn't bother writing it down properly in any official handbook.
Can
And
you
therefore, liberalism is
can you
only what
can you expand what you mean by it? Can you just define liberalism? What are you
I'm
talking about?
about to. Yes. So liberalism is basically what any leader of any Western political party or government says it is. And this applies to conservatism or fascism or Nazism. It's like, well, I'm the leader of X party, and you know the ideology of the party I support is what I say it is, and this includes conservatives as well as liberals and fascists and Nazis, and they make it up as they go along, and that is precisely the problem. And I guess when you make it up as they go along, people think you're cheating and they hate you for cheating. And if they ask you what the rules are, and every time they ask you, you give them a different answer, then they know that you're a liar, and then they know that you're never going to follow the rules, and the only way to deal with you is to kill you. because you know, if they know that this game that everybody is supposed to be playing is cheated, you know, whose winner is always cheating, then why would they waste time playing this game only to be told that they've lost again? And this time, Westerners have done it to themselves in stolen elections. Obviously, the American proletariat do not agree with neoconservatism or neoliberalism because they hate neocon wars that I guess white working class Americans are expected to die in, and they don't like mass immigration, and so the American people themselves do not support American imperialism, and in fact neither do Europeans who end up having the same problem of mass immigration and neocon wars, and this time in Europe too. So I think, you know, that is a problem. Not knowing what the rules are, not knowing when our leaders break them, or you know, not being able to even formulate these arguments to point it out. But I'm saying, you know, with Abrahamic religions, at least, you know, it's in the Torah or in the Quran. You can go and say, hey, this is not what the Quran says. We are not supposed to be doing this. But if you don't have an official handbook like the Jews or the Muslims, you're helpless against the leaders. I mean, America doesn't have an official religion, so any Jew, Christian, or Muslim going to Congress and saying, hey, we're not supposed to be doing this, Congress will say, we're not Jews, we're not Christians, we're not Muslims, we're going to carry on making up the rules as they go along.
What do you think of human rights laws then?
Well, there are different sets of human rights because Allah has a different idea of human rights than liberals do. Isn't that so, Khaled?
Well, I mean, I do agree that the goalposts for liberals are always changing according to social norms. So whatever the social norms are, that's what being liberal means at the moment. So, yeah, I would say even amongst liberals, they keep changing. It is good that some human rights are written down. I'm not sure that they seem to be rarely followed, though. According to these so-called Western liberal countries, they don't seem to think they apply to Palestinians, for example.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
the two sets of human rights, and I think that there's some areas of agreement, like, you know, the right to life, the right to property, that sort of thing, which both liberals and Muslims officially support. But I think where there is divergence is the idea of who we're allowed to have sex with. So you know, obviously Jews and Muslims think we're not supposed to have sex with anyone other than our spouse, and our spouse can only be a member of the opposite sex. But liberals say we can have sex with anyone as long as they're another consenting adult. I've finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Khaled, I think it's you to have your 5 minutes.
Should we do the 1 minute thing? Because we've only got 2 minutes left.
Well, I'm thinking this is such a serious subject. If we all need to speak a bit more on this, I think we should speak more on this. I'd like to speak more on this.
Sure.
But,
okay, cool. Yep.
It's up to you two.
Okay, great. Let's do it. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, thank you, Claire, for explaining the stuff I was kind of glazing over, which is I said the secularists in Judas so Dust was saying, you know, you could, was it called, is there an example of how religion causes all these fights? And I said right in the beginning, actually, before the Zionists turned up, there were no problems for hundreds of years, so that doesn't make sense. But not only that, Claire was talking about the inherent problems of secularism, which is something I also roughly pointed out, which is if you leave the Israelis to themselves, they'll implode just like Europe is, and they will need the Muslims back. So let me quickly click. What did I click on here? Jews will not hire Gazans again. Guess what? They currently hire Gazans to run their what's it called?
Do any work at all?
Do Do the Gazans? What do you mean? The Gazans do.
Well, to do, you know, all the working class work. I mean, the Orthodox Jews can't do it because they just learn Torah. They can't, you know,
That's
they're
right.
not builders, carpenters, you know.
Yeah,
So,
and
so
then the
the Arabs
secularists.
are their
Yeah,
working class.
yeah, they are the working class. So there's a practical reality. People don't seem to realize that. I think especially when people are what's the one when you what's the word? I forget words, basic words like when you stop buying things from Israeli companies.
Boycott.
Boycott, right? You're boycotting. I'm not saying they should. It's a bit confusing, really, but they are boycotting people, Palestinians at the same time, by the way. But anyway, that's another topic. And then there was another interesting comment. No Muslim nation is willing to take a single refugee. That's completely wrong. 85% of the country I'm living in is Palestinian, anyway. But that is a Jewish myth that they depend on, the Zionist Jewish myth that they depend on, like, oh, we're left with these Palestinians and nobody's taking them, and therefore we have to deal with them. This is a very common story they tell themselves so that they can persecute the Palestinians. So that's just not true. There's thousands of Palestinians going to Egypt and where I am in Jordan, all over the world. So that's just completely wrong. But yep. So that's that. And what other? I think I've kind of covered most of the issues. I've already talked about jihad. If you're going to do jihad, it should be according to the religious rules, which is everybody agrees all war should be not involving civilians. Unity is a very important solution. But the immediate answer, I would say, because I care about human lives rather than having just these debates while people are dying, is leave Palestine. If you were in my family, I would say leave Palestine. And Dus says things like, oh, Khaled just doesn't care. Actually, I would say Dus doesn't care if he doesn't think leaving a war-torn country is a good idea. Palestinians are desperately trying to leave right now, and they're being trapped right now. So, yeah.
Gaza Strip is a prison. You can't leave unless you cross a barrier and allowed out.
No, but they can. Okay. So
Gaza Strip, which is where
no,
the
that's
bombing
not exactly right. They can leave, especially if they want to leave to another country, but it's very controlled. It's not like a livable place. So if you're living in there, it's like an open air prison, but yet you can leave. There's so many Palestinians leaving. But if you live there and you don't have much choice in terms of where you live, right? Well, you could possibly move to Israel if they're willing to accept you. But if you're living there, it is a hell on earth. You're going to be bombed, you're going to be killed, and things like that. And you have very limited resources. So, yeah, that's how it is. Yep, I'm good. I think I said. I mean, I feel like I didn't paid enough attention to what some of the things Claire was saying. So earlier on, Claire was saying she was debunking basically Christianity, which is essentially idolatry. And it probably is worth mentioning that to the Christians who are funding the Zionist movement. So there is value, I think, in what Claire was saying in that side of things. Yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you very much. So 5 minutes, 15 seconds. Well done.
Cool.
So liberalism, Donald Trump, war, America, the West. The West is pushed and owned by the Abrahamic religions. And the reason why they don't have full federal control is because we still have strong unions here and strong protesting, which is being eradicated as we speak by the Abrahamic religions, which is exactly what Hitler did as well, who was trying to promote this Abrahamic dream of destroying unions, destroying protests, and creating this dictatorship, which is one of Khaled's dreams that he's talked about many times. But that's not Khaled's dream. It's the dream he was educated to have by his religious leaders. And this is an ongoing story, and every time people stand up, people stand up and declare their independence and emancipation. So we can have emancipated Muslims, emancipated Jewish people, emancipated Christians. All this means is having control over your religious leaders, who the majority, of course, have just committed and will permanently commit, to situations of war, like in Israel. They commit to this idea. They commit. And so it'd be, as I'm trying to promote, and always have done, is that your religious texts need to be rewritten. They need to be looked at and asked section by section, will this promote rape and genocide? I mean, Khaled was saying his jihad, innocent people don't get attacked in it. I mean, it's just utter insanity.
Just to clarify, I'm saying it's not jihad that what Hamas is doing, because it's breaking all the rules. Jihad is when you don't kill civilians.
Yeah, the idea that you can have a war and a conflict without hurting civilians is utter insanity. Every conflict always leads to women being raped, being murdered, being disempowered, which is the other part which I'm trying to get to all this. So the profits are made by weapons company, by your religious leaders who just get to create more religious fanatics during this horror. And also they get to destroy human beings and their human rights. Because this is what it's really all, those three things is what this is all about. It's not about the land. It's not about Palestine or Israel's land. It's about profits. It's about creating more religious fanatics for forevermore who committed to murder in the name of God. But it's also committed to destroying human rights and people being able to say no to people like Khaled, and putting people in prison like Khaled, who constantly promotes the repression of different community groups. And it's fundamentally human rights should stretch to religious leaders, but it needs whether you're Jewish or Catholic or Protestant or Muslim, etc., to have laws that can put your religious leaders into prison if they break them, like Donald Trump. He's a great example of an Abrahamic religious leader, and he's broken the laws, and it's laughed at that he should be in prison for breaking the laws, for creating a insurrection, which is attacking against democracy. America just barely have a democracy to begin with. What crumbling diatribe of shambolic claim to be a democracy. There is something still there, and Trump even thought that was too much of a democracy and tried to destroy that. And this is the Abrahamic leadership's dream, and that's why human rights laws need to be implemented across the whole world, so that when your religious leaders are murdering you, repressing you, and throwing stones at you, then you can, with these laws, put these people in prison. And because they claim to be murdering you in the name of God, their own communities I'm talking about, in the name of God, and cleansing their own communities in the name of God, these people can be stopped. And that's been the history of the world for the last 2,500 years plus. And today's war is just a repeat of 2,000 years ago. It was war against this Abrahamic leadership who have no interest. But there are, of course, I'd imagine, people out there that do understand emancipation of the Jewish people, emancipation of Muslim people. And that doesn't mean not being Jewish. That just means having power to stop these endless wars and being used, and that your death is being used to justify another war tomorrow, which is exactly what these deaths are all being used as, to excuse tomorrow's death. And Khalid saying that you can have war where women don't get raped or murdered or killed is absolutely ridiculous. There's a word there somewhere, I couldn't say it. And it's a very tragic thing. Yeah, finished. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to emphasise, to congratulate Khalid on his point about the option of the Palestinians withdrawing their labour, because this was an option exercised by the plebs in Rome when they didn't think that the patricians were treating them right. They would just leave Rome and the patricians to clean their own toilets, and eventually somebody would come running after them and say, please come back, we'll make your conditions better, and then they would return, and maybe that could be an option. But I suppose at the moment people are just standing their ground and saying we'll never leave, we're going to defend our land, even though it means getting killed, and we're not ever leaving, and God supports us. And therefore, if both sides are saying they are supported by God, we should question their claims. And this verse that I'm trying to get discussed by Muslims, chapter 17, verse 104, that apparently says that God is a Zionist, is not being well. I don't see any academic treatment of it, because it's basically God saying go and dwell in the land, and with the implicit presumption that only if Jews implement or obey the laws of God, they will have peaceful enjoyment of their land, and they are to live with Gentiles, and they have to, because somebody has got to do the work. So I think that can be that much is agreed, but having a 2 or 3 state solution is obviously not living it as a commingled crowd, which is what the Quran requires. And Das was talking about leaders, and fundamentally they're hypocrites. They don't really believe in the religion. They're only using the religion to strengthen the resolve in their believers to kill the other group. And to the extent that religion is useful for them, they're going to use it to strengthen the resolve for violence and continuing battle. But I think the most important question facing the Arabs and Israelis is whether God is in fact a Zionist. And I would hope that Jews and Muslims can better consider this verse in the Quran, so that they can determine what it really means. I just don't see any Muslims talking about that verse at all in any learned or coherent way.
I was just thinking, if none of us got anything new to add, then we should wrap this up, I think. But it's up to you lot.
Aren't we going to consider?
I forgot that I was mute. 100. You mean verse 104?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chapter 17, verse 104. Before we go.
So sure, I'll talk about it briefly, because I mentioned it in a different context, but I'll do it briefly. Yeah, because I know we've gone quite well over, but it's good. It's clearly an important topic. People are dying. 1,000 people are dying, so it's very important. Anyway, so what I got from it, is it's a prophecy that the Jews will return, because it said there we bring you back from various peoples in the latter days, which I think we're in. That I think we're in the latter days, because I believe in the promised Messiah, the second coming of Jesus, and he's supposed to come in the latter days. So that ties in with my belief very accurately. But is God a Zionist in that he welcomed the children of Israel to their hometown, Canaan, which is where modern day Palestine or Israel is? That's not really Zionism. It's just common sense that they need to live somewhere.
In the promised land.
Yeah, but then there's a further saying. I mean, so what's sort of maybe hidden in this verse is that if they're going to be brought back from various places, remember there's a chronology here. First of all, they were told, go to Israel, live there in Palestine, and then it says, we shall bring you together out of various people. That means at some point, and everybody knows this historically, Nebuchadnezzar, I think just the first or second, I can't remember, who's the one who enslaved the Jewish people and took them out to different places like Iraq? Was it the first or second? I can't remember. But anyway, it's implied here that they would be taken out of. So God only if this is a prophecy from God, then God enables these things to happen, and it is God that eventually what things to happen for the Jewish people to be removed from Israel. So God can't exactly be a Zionist in that simple form, and then God will enable them to come back as well, like they are today in the latter days, which I believe we're in. But it's only a temporary situation, because a follow-up to that verse of the Quran is, and it's also a quote from the book of David, the Psalms, where so the Quran is referencing a prophecy from the Bible, essentially, that the righteous will inherit the land. And in that particular case, the land specifically was Palestine. So my short answer is, all righteous people will be welcome to the Holy Land, as it's known, Israel. It's not just Jews, and
Can you
Jews are
define
not
righteous?
forbidden from it. Ah, that's a good point. It's good people according to religious doctrine, because if you don't have, just like Claire was saying, liberals don't have a clear idea of what is right and wrong. That's always shifting according to cultural norms. Like, when do you marry, for example? You know, what age? It used to be you could be 12, 13, whatever. There were kings and queens of England that used to marry at that time. But now it's, oh, you
think
can't marry to this
12-year-old marriage
person.
is fine. You've said that live.
Yeah, I actually do. Yeah, I think
good.
biologically, if you're, I think it's very,
Good
I would
as
say,
in you've been on.
arrogant. Yeah, it's very arrogant to say you know better than nature. Like, if you're a female or male, man, woman, and able to sexually reproduce. And by the way, you do have teenage mothers in the UK. There's lots of
It's
teenage
illegal to
mothers.
have sex with under 16 in the
Yeah,
UK.
because somebody
So
made
therefore,
it.
people go to prison.
This is the exact problem with secular rules. They're not based on nature or reality. It's just the goalposts are always shifting. So
Seculars,
who are you?
you're accusing
Who are
seculars of hating
you? Who are
paedophiles.
you to tell people when they're allowed to have
Like
sex?
tell a
There could be
paedophile
some
to stop.
secular person in the future says, "Oh, you're not allowed to have sex until you're 30 years old or something." Who are you to make up these random rules? That's what I'm saying. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm glad you're
Yeah.
defending the paedophile community. As in, that's sarcasm from me, by the way.
Pedophile is the definition of pedophile is having sex with a child. I'm talking with an adult,
12-year-old.
whatever they are. Yeah, you can. How do you know there's lots of teenage pregnancies?
Yeah,
There's
it's
teenage
illegal.
moms who are 12 years. Okay, there we go. We're going round in circles. So you don't want to
It's illegal.
address the obvious reality that you can be a woman or a man at 12
Anyway,
years old.
we're off subject.
Anyway, off subject. But anyway, yeah. Cool. So that, I don't know if that answers anything, Claire.
Yes, I suppose that, we're just not clear about the rules, and but the interesting thing about the Jews and Muslims is that they're supposed to believe in the same God, right? I mean, that's the whole idea of the Abrahamic religions are supposed to, and the areas of disagreement is basically the Jews saying, we're close to God because we're God's chosen people, and Muslims saying, no, you're not, or you may be, but you're still
You
wrong,
were,
or
yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I think, instead of bombing each other and killing each other, there should be more theological discussions between rabbis and Islamic scholars on this subject, rather than,
But do you see
who killed
that
more.
there was no problem before the Zionists turned up? So I don't think it's a particular religious thing. Didn't you see that? Don't you see that?
Well, religion and politics is kind of the same thing, because I've been saying about Das is that his religion is really liberalism, because he thinks liberalism
Uh,
is the best,
I've never said
and therefore we're all
Whoa,
wrong.
whoa, 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 whoa. When have I said liberalism is the solution? Can you just quote that moment I said that?
Well, aren't you a liberal?
Oh, thank you for asking at last, rather than just assuming. No, I'm a human rights advocate.
That's
And the
liberal.
Constitution and liberalism means just like Hillary Clinton, she's a liberal, but she's fundamentally built by Abrahamic ideology and backed by people like Donald Trump. Donald Trump loved to back
But
her.
Trump does not back Hillary. What a ridiculous thing to say. That's what
Yes,
enemies.
I know you in your world you think that's true, but Donald Trump was on the presidential campaign when he was fighting Hillary Clinton, said that he was one of her major supporters. He gave her loads of money. He said that live on TV, and the fact you're not aware of that is not your fault, of course, because we can't know all things that are said. But liberalism, Donald Trump, people like Donald Trump.
Why would he give her money?
Because they're all the same people. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are the same people. The only difference between the two is one of them lies much more than the other person. That's the only difference. But they both want the same world, which is war. Let's not forget Donald Trump takes loads of money from Saudi Arabia. Let's not forget that. But Hillary
I don't know
Clinton,
anything about that. Why would they give him money?
They gave his children loads of money, and therefore him by definition, and he helped support Saudi Arabia because that's what Israel are doing as well. The religious leadership, they love each other and they have an agreement with each other to create misery and horror on the war in this world, which is why they keep selling each other weapons. It's not a miracle that you end up all these weapons. It's not a miracle you end up all this oil wealth. It's because the Abrahamic, what you call the West and liberalism, but is actually the end result of Abrahamic religion, is fueling Saudi Arabia.
No,
fueling
if America had a religion, then
they swear an oath to God.
I'm saying America doesn't have an official religion, and that is a problem.
Yeah.
They have
Should we
people
do
pretending to be Christian.
Should we do a 1 minute roundup, because now we're moving away from Palestine? I can see it's somehow related, but I think we've covered the main thing. Would you think, Claire, we've covered the main issues surrounding more closely related to the Palestine issue?
Yes. We're talking about America now because they're the ones causing the problem.
Yeah, that's true. I can see the relation, but it's kind of like
they are the ones.
further out. Yeah. I was trying to, I was hoping to look for immediate solutions. I mean, stopping Western or American imperialism is a bit of a bigger, slower issue, I think. But anyway.
So you believe in apocalyptic Christian solution, Khaled?
Apocalyptic Christian solution? What, when the Messiah comes, all problems will be solved immediately? Is that what you're saying? No, I don't, because I believe the Messiah has already come, okay, and it's a long-term revolution through love. That I'm a follower of that group. Love for all, hatred for none is our motto. Yeah.
Okay, you want to go first? It's your topic, and that means the lady goes last.
Okay.
And it's 1 minute, everyone. It's 1 minute. So
yeah.
1 minute.
Okay. So very briefly, there are many solutions. I'm not even going to bother with, who are the oppressors. That's pretty obvious. It's Israel. But I care about looking at Palestinians as just human beings, as if they are my family. What would I do? Just leave. There are many opportunities abroad. I think Claire made a fantastic point that I didn't exactly articulate. Well, I pretty much did. But anyway, that if they leave, they'll be called back anyway, because they are the grassroots, they run the farms, everything. They are the heart, they are the working class, and Israel would implode without them anyway. So let them save their own children, their own selves, and it will be fine, because in Jordan, for example, life is very good. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, it's me. Again, here we have the Abrahamic leaders fulfilling their own personal heaven on earth, which is getting all you lot to murder each other and blame each other for the horrors which are happening now. And it's typical rhetoric from their media, which from the West, which is just to blame the poor for all the problems in the world. And you can't just leave because your mother or child has just been murdered. This is just going to create more religious fanatics, which is the perfect dream and the perfect heaven on earth for your Abrahamic leadership. They want to see you suffer, and suffering is what you do. And that means creating more war and profits for the prophets, for them internally and evermore. Repeat story for thousands of years. 1 minute 5 seconds. Okay, when you're ready.
Yes, I am going to say that it is a theological problem, because if Israel is, if God is Zionist, then the Israelis have the right to live there, and if they do have the right to live there, there would be certain conditions. If God exists, he would expect them to follow his laws. Because Israel is a liberal democracy, promoting the policies of Sodom and Gomorrah, it means that they're not following God's laws, and that is precisely the problem. And Hamas have said, you know, they're basically conditional Zionists, saying Israeli Jews can live there, but they have to live under Sharia, and obviously Jews and America that supports Jews in Israel are not going to agree to that, because America is basically a nation of atheists and nihilists who talk about a rules-based order without actually practicing it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well done. Thank you. Khaled, I think we're all going to say our individual goodbyes now, and I'd like to thank our new speaker. I think she's added tremendously to our discussion. Thank you to Khaled for hosting this show, and to our viewers as well for watching and interacting. I think it's a very important subject, and it's very sad how it's all been going at the moment. I am the dust, and in these sad times, I am not settled.
Yeah, well, it is sad times, yeah. Claire, do you want to say something?
Yes, I want to thank
Yep.
Dus for moderating so well. Yeah, I suppose it is, well, just very helpful to have, 3 different people who don't quite agree, because it would be very boring if we did. So thank you for having me again, Khaled.
Absolutely, yeah. It's always great. Dust, you got bubbles. I don't know how that's kind of floating around you. It keeps happening, but anyway.
Some special.
Special, yeah, yep. Yeah, I always think it's amazing that we can completely disagree very, very much, yet everybody appreciates everybody else's input because it's, like Claire says, it's necessary. It definitely helps me articulate things better. If I was just talking to myself or somebody totally agreed with me, I'll probably not explain my arguments as well. So thank you, everybody. And I think hopefully all the different opinions encourage different viewers as well. And having said that, thank you, people in the chat and everybody else who watches non-live as well. Thank you very much. We're going to jump to another stream now. Only spend a bit of time on it. I'd love Claire to join if you like. Just to introduce it, it's does. Oh my God. Oh God. I've mistyped it. Anyway, does God justify your hate? And I've given the link somewhere in the live chat.
We just need to add, we've only
Yes.
got 30 minutes on that subject, so it's
Yeah,
going to be very
it's going to
brief.
be brief. Sure. Because we've covered it a couple of times anyway in different ways. So, Claire, hopefully see if you want. I've already just sent
I'd
you.
love to join, so
That would
I'll
be
see you
cool.
there.
Cool. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.